Good morning, Spirit and Truth. You caught us in the joy, right in the midst of the joy of the Lord this morning. When you work for the same place for your entire life, and most of your life, as everybody in this room has, you're all family. And so we've had our little therapy session this morning. We've gotten all of our family issues worked out. We've got our medical problems all fixed. And so we are ready to be in the Spirit with you today, and we're glad that you're connecting with us today at Connection. I know that there's a special word that's coming for you. This is my service. This is one of the only services I get to just sit back and let my spirit be fed. And so I'm going to get fed with you this morning, if that's okay. God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the celestial food that's coming down from heaven into our hearts. God, we thank you that the answer is already with us and in us. We give you thanks today, God, that you're removing all the obstacles that keep us from seeing what you would have us to see today. For it's in the name and nature of Jesus the Christ, they all would say amen. Amen. Good morning, everybody.
Amen. Good morning. Okay, we're going to start with our morning blessing right off the bat. Spirit of truth, we come to you today to declare these intentions that we as a corporate body are focusing on this year. We have joyful, energetic bodies. We have loving, compassionate hearts. We have restful, alert minds, and we experience lightness of being in all things. It is our intention today and for the rest of this year to replace any resistance, disorder, effort, or struggle with gentleness, clarity, health, eagerness, love, joy, and freedom as our natural state. It is our prayer, our intention, and our heart's desire to be fully awake today and always. We believe it, we perceive it, and now we receive it in the name and nature of the Christ. Amen. And so it is. Okay, so quick disclaimer right up front. A lot of the quotes that I'm going to read right now might sound anti-man or anti-male, and that is not at all the intention of the teaching today. As I've talked about many times before, there is the masculine and all the qualities that go with it, which are necessary and important, and then there is the feminine and its qualities that are all necessary and important. And these two don't always strictly adhere to gender. All people have both masculine and feminine qualities within them to varying degrees. So when I talk about the masculine and the feminine, don't let your mind automatically jump to men versus women. This is not about men versus women. Okay. Also, as I've talked about many times before, our particular culture has been masculine heavy for centuries now. So much of this shift that we're experiencing right now is an attempt to bring that back into a more even balance between the masculine and the feminine, between action and rest, between forward movement and receptivity. So we're going to talk about all of that today, but I didn't want to lose all my macho men right at the beginning before I read the quotes. So just bear with me. I promise it will all make sense in the end. Okay, first quote. Male and female represent the two sides of the great radical dualism, but in fact, they are perpetually passing into one another. Fluid hardens to solid, solid melts to fluid. There is no wholly masculine man nor purely feminine woman. Margaret Fuller. Okay, next, there is a collective force rising up in the earth today, an energy of the reborn feminine. This is a time of monumental shift from the male dominance of human consciousness to a balance between masculine and feminine. Marianne Williamson. Next, the original languages didn't even have words for he and she. They didn't have concepts of masculine and feminine per se. People were people, and the whole idea was that we were in a circle together, not in a hierarchy of male over female. Gloria Steinem. Next, the world in the past has been ruled by force and men have dominated women by reason of their more forceful and aggressive qualities. They were aggressed. I said, my brother was talking to me the other day about how he's been hearing people use the word aggressed, which I'm not sure it's a word, but it's become a word. Okay, so anyway, back to my quote. The world in the past has been ruled by force, and men have dominated women by reason of their more forceful and aggressive qualities, both of body and mind. But the balance is already shifting. Rule by force is losing its weight, and mental alertness, intuition, and the spiritual qualities of love and service, in which women, or the feminine, are stronger, are gaining ascendancy. Hence, the new age will be less masculine and more permeated with feminine ideals, or more accurately, will be an age in which the masculine and feminine elements of civilization, did I just say civilization? I did. I used a B. Civilization will be more evenly balanced. Abdul Baha said that. Okay, next, we're almost through. The ancients envisioned their world in two halves, masculine and feminine. Their gods and goddesses work to keep a balance of power, yin and yang. When male and female are balanced, there is harmony in the world. When they are unbalanced, there is chaos. Dan Brown. Okay, so that's pretty much where we are now. We're way out of balance between the masculine and the feminine, and so we are in chaos. But what do we know? What have we learned about chaos? It's just order in disguise. And the truest, most ancient definition of the word chaos is the void, which we've talked about, is where everything is created. So right now we are in chaos, but we are in the process of creating, or rather recreating, our whole cultural structure and bringing it back into balance, and thus bringing it back into harmony, which leads me to our final quote. Non-violent actions are by their nature androgynous. In them, the two impulses that have long been treated as distinct, masculine and feminine, the impulse of self-assertion and the impulse of empathy, are clearly joined. The very genius of nonviolence, in fact, is that it demonstrates the two to be indivisible, and so restores human community. Barbara Deming said that. Okay, so that sounds good, right? Restoring human community. I am all for that. So let's talk about some ways we can do it. Tony and I were watching a movie the other night, and it was about a young guy who was in training to be a rescue swimmer for the Coast Guard. And as in a lot of movies from the 80s on up until now that involve some type of military training, there were a lot of scenes of young men and women, the trainees, being put through their paces pretty harshly by their drill sergeants. So we're all familiar with these movies. There's a lot of screaming and yelling in their faces, belittling them, degrading them, calling them names, telling them they're nothing, telling them they're worthless, telling them they're not going to make it, pushing them to their absolute physical, emotional, and mental limit for the express purpose of breaking them. The military and law enforcement academies make no secret of the fact that that is their goal, to see exactly how much a person can take before they break. They do this for a lot of reasons. If asked why, they'd probably give answers like they do it to weed out those candidates who are too weak to handle the pressure of whatever the job is, to see how badly someone wants to be a part of their group, their organization, how strong their desire is. They do it as a way of measuring someone's level of commitment, tenacity, endurance, all the things that are necessary for the job they're someday going to have to perform. They do it to rid them. This is interesting. They do it to rid them of all their previous conditioning. Okay, they take all their indoctrination out, just so that they can then re-indoctrinate them with their conditioning. And And so to some degree, I guess that those are valid reasons, but it still just never has sat right with me that you've got to absolutely break someone for them to prove their worthiness for a certain position. And I know I'm probably way on the opposite end of things with my mama's heart, because every time I see a scene like that, I think, what if it was one of my boys that was being screamed and yelled at and treated like that? I sat there watching this scene and thinking, this is just so unnecessary. They just don't have to treat those boys like that. But that's what's come to be accepted and acceptable in those segments of our society. And again, it just goes to what I was saying earlier, that we are way out of balance. We border on abusing people in the name of toughening them up and getting them ready to face whatever it is we think they're going to have to face. But that whole ethos has strayed far beyond just the military and law enforcement training facilities and programs where it might actually be necessary. Those methods, as I said, whether they're strictly physical or whether they extend to mental and emotion, have become commonplace in our society. We have come to value very highly, in every walk of life, people's ability to take a lot of physical punishment, or to wear a lot of different hats, to go without sleep, or any number of other unhealthy practices, which we equate with strength. I want to mention here that on Sunday, as part of my brother's sermon, he was talking about masks, the masks that we wear. And he mentioned some information from a Wayne Dyer book saying that he was talking about ego, and that your ego, Wayne Dyer says, you'll say, I am what I have, or I am what I do. But I am what other people think of me, but those are just masks. Well, I'm going to add today, some of us wear the mask of, I am how much punishment I can withstand. I am how much abuse I can endure. And when you stop to think about that, that's kind of twisted. It's like, but that's something we've come to glorify. We've glorified how tough someone can be. I remember watching a video once of a guy who showed it to me with a lot of pride. It was of himself. He had just graduated in the military from what I think they call jump school, where they learn how to jump out of planes. And as part of the graduation ceremony, they receive this little pin, and it looks like a parachute with wings on the side, and it's made to wear on their uniform. And it's kind of like an earring. It's got like a little post with a back on it, but the post is really sharp. And so instead of just handing them this pin at their graduation ceremony, it has become the custom that whoever's given it to them will actually put it on their chest, and then they take their fist and like punch it in, like, and actually pierce their skin with it. And then they all say, "Ooh, rah," how they do that. And in the end, when they're dismissed, they're all, beating their chest and ooh-rahing each other and congratulating on, all their corporate toughness. And that's what has come to be considered strength. And I was thinking about it, though, you know what I consider strength? I consider strength as being kind to someone who has been unkind to you. Keeping your mouth shut when you would probably be totally justified in saying, "I told you so," to someone. Taking care of people who cannot take care of themselves. Taking care of the earth. Sharing what you have with others. That is what is strength to me. And again, I know all this other macho stuff is tradition. I just happen to think it's a tad overboard, but that may just be me. I'm sure it serves a purpose in some situations, but personally, I don't get it. It's like the whole guys that drive the big, huge trucks or the souped-up fast cars, and they, rev their motors and then peel off at red lights. I always think to myself, I'm really not sure who you think you're impressing. It's not me. My point is, we live in, and we have lived in, a highly masculine-driven, testosterone-fueled world for a very long time. And the imbalance of that is finally catching up with us. Just bear with me here. Just look at the President of the United States, okay? He is a reflection He is a product, in my opinion, of what this mentality, allowed to get out of balance, has resulted in. He's crude. He uses foul language. He makes fun of those who are vulnerable and even disabled. He calls people names constantly and publicly. He refers to people as losers and worse. He has absolutely no desire to find common ground with people who disagree with him. It is his way or the highway. He has a huge ego. According to him, everything he does, says, and has is the best. He's never wrong. To hear him tell it, he has never made a mistake. The minute anyone around him gets into trouble, he cuts and runs. He distances himself from them. He expects complete loyalty from others, but then he does not reciprocate that same loyalty back to them. He has thrown countless business and political associates under the bus without hesitation. He exhibits absolutely no moral character, and yet he holds the most powerful office in the world, which would seem to reinforce the idea that all of what he stands for and how he behaves is right. I mean, he won, right? I mean, he must be something doing right. He must be doing something right, right? Because winning is everything. And again, I'm being really sarcastic because I'm trying to prove the point. That's what happens when you allow a society to get so completely out of balance to one side. So enough of that. I don't want this to devolve any further by continuing to bash him. I'm just emphasizing that the place where we are now, where we have gotten to, is a result of allowing this macho, overly masculinized ethos to run amok, unchallenged, with absolutely no balance from the feminine side for far too long. But the good news is it is always darkest before the dawn. And so I think maybe we had to get where we are now to realize, hey, this is not where we want to be. This is not who we want to be. This is not the appropriate way to deal with things. But it has become our lens, largely. Remember last week we talked about being attached to our particular lens. We've been looking through this masculine heavy lens for a long time, and so sometimes this is the only way we know how to deal with things. When we come up against a problem, that's the lens we often look through as we're trying to find a solution. Just think about our language, the language we use, even when it comes to our physical health. When we are told that we have an illness or a disease, what are the first words that come out of our mouth? I'm going to fight this. Because the lens of fighting is what we have been conditioned to look through for everything. Our language, our stories, our literature, everything is full of conquering, overcoming, defeating this or that. And there's a place for that. I'm not saying there's not. It's just not everywhere. And it's not the answer in every situation, but it has become our default setting. The United States is one of the most litigious countries, if not the most, on earth. That is your word for the day, litigious. It just means that we sue everybody for everything. We even have daily TV shows. How many daily TV shows do you know? The People's Court, Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown. Everybody wants to go to court. Everybody wants to fight each other because we become attached to this lens of fighting. So when we face darkness of any kind in ourselves and others out in the world, our first instinct is fight it. I remember the old Christian contemporary song, Randy and Benny, you'll probably remember this. My brother may be still even too young, but back in the 70s, one of my favorite Christian contemporary bands, they came to sing at Alpha 79, Fireworks. You remember Fireworks? One of my favorite songs of theirs was Shatter the Darkness. And I still listen to it sometimes because there are synapses in my brain that still fire when I hear that song. But that's been our mentality for so long towards the devil, what we consider darkness, evil. That's how we deal with it. We shatter it, we kill it, destroy it, eliminate it. We sang so many songs like that back then. Ready for battle, we attack. Remember that? We attack. We are well. Okay. Even little like Onward Christian Soldiers. I'm in the Lord's army, Randy Renfro. Victory in Jesus. Put on your armor, armed and ready. And you know we stomp the devil at every chance we got. We stomp that devil. So I'm sorry, you can't hear my brother's side comments over here. So to go old English on you for a minute, what hath that wrought? Or in modern speak, where has all of that gotten us? Well, it's gotten us to the place we are now, where we will fight even when a different solution would be more effective. My cousin Hannah sent me an article a couple of days ago that gives some insight into where we are now and why we are here. And I want to read you now some excerpts from it. It's called Your Surge Capacity is Depleted, and It's Why You Feel Awful, by a woman named Tara Haley. This woman who wrote it is a science journalist who writes about infectious diseases and medical research for a living, but she's writing here about her personal experience in the midst of this pandemic. In the beginning of the article, she's talking about going to therapy sessions with her psychiatrist, and she describes how she's frustrated and a little exhausted trying to work from home as well as homeschool her two kids at the same time. She was a little frustrated with this for the first few months of lockdown, but she was surviving. She says it was frustrating to be stuck at home nonstop, scrambling to get in grocery delivery orders before slots filled up, and tracking down toilet paper. But I was still doing well because I thrive in high-stress emergency situations. I was on fire, cranking out stories, explaining epidemiological concepts in my social networks, trying to help everyone around me make sense of the frightening circumstances of a pandemic and the anxiety surrounding the virus. I knew it wouldn't last. It never does. But even knowing I would eventually crash, I didn't appreciate how hard the crash would be, or how long it would last, or how hard it would be to try to get back up over and over again, or what getting up even looked like. In the early months, I, along with most of the rest of the country, was using surge capacity to operate. Surge capacity is a collection of adaptive systems, mental and physical, that humans draw on for short-term survival in acutely stressful situations such as natural disasters. But natural disasters occur over a short period, even if the recovery is long. Pandemics are different. The disaster itself stretches out indefinitely. The pandemic has demonstrated both what we can do with surge capacity and the limits of surge capacity. When it's depleted, it has to be renewed. But what happens when you struggle to renew it because the emergency phase has now become chronic? While the phrase adjusting to the new normal has been repeated endlessly since March, it's easier said than done. How do you adjust to an ever-changing situation where the new normal is indefinite uncertainty? This is an unprecedented disaster for most of us that is profound in its impact on our daily lives. But it's different from a hurricane or tornado where you can look outside and see the damage. The destruction of this, for most people, is invisible and ongoing. So many systems aren't working as they normally do right now, which means radical shifts in work, school, and home life that almost none of us have past experience with. Even those who have worked in disaster recovery or served in the military are facing a different kind of uncertainty right now. People can use their surge capacity for acute periods, but when dire circumstances drag on, you have to adopt a different style of coping. I realized that my personal operating system, though it had led to tremendous success professionally, had failed me on a personal level. I had to find a different way of contending with life. Okay, I'm going to continue reading from this article in a moment, but I want to stop right here and say this is what I was trying to say earlier. That's what my whole setup about masculine versus feminine was about. That overly masculine training model might and does work in certain situations. It has proven to have a certain level of success. And also, let me take this opportunity while I'm here pausing to say, yes, I am grateful that I live in a free country, and I am thankful for all of the protection I have been afforded all of my life by both the military and law enforcement. But the methods I was describing earlier, even though they might be effective and appropriate in some settings, in other settings, they don't work at all. And when we face a different kind of challenge, which this pandemic is, we need a different kind of approach. But we are so attached to this particular lens of always being ready to fight, of always wanting to overcome and defeat whatever we perceive to be the problem at the moment. We can only, the deal is, though, we can only live in that high alert for so long at a time. As she was saying earlier, yes, we all know what it's like for that adrenaline to kick in an emergency, and that very masculine response, quick action. But this situation is not like that, and so we can't respond like that. This is a much slower emergency. And that's interesting because a lot of people would think those were opposite words, slow and emergency, but it really is. It's a slow emergency. It's a slowly rolling out emergency. And so it requires a different style of coping, as she says. It's going to take a more feminine approach of playing the long game, of being patient, of knowing how and when to renew and replenish your resources, of knowing when to stop fighting so that you can live to fight another day. That whole fighting with everything you've got till the last drop of blood is a very masculine approach. That, as I said, is effective in some situations, mostly for short periods of time. Feminine energy and strategy is much slower because it's not about that burst of brute force. It is slow, sustained strength. Okay, back to the article. She says, our culture is very solution-oriented, which is a good way of thinking for many things. It's partly responsible for getting a man on the moon and a rover on Mars and all the things we've done in this country that are wonderful. But it's a very destructive way of thinking when you're faced with a problem that has no solution, at least not for a while. So basically what she's saying here is we're very used to relatively quick fixes, and that's a very masculine thing. I don't, men dread when women say we need to talk because they're not about having long conversations. They just want to get to the fix as quickly as possible so they can go watch the game. So that's a very masculine thing, is to want a quick fix. We're like that in the United States. We're very solution oriented. But sometimes finding the solution isn't going to be achieved with that push, 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 work harder oriented approach. In other words, it's time for us to shift to a more feminine approach. So later on in this article, she talks about how important self-care is, which is also a more feminine quality than masculine. And she says the irony of that right now is that a lot of the ways we're used to taking care of ourselves, going to salons, whatever, getting a massage, nails done, pampering yourself, a lot of those avenues are closed to us at the moment. So to address this, I want to go now to one of our other favorite people, Dr. Kim DeRamo, who has this to say about the subject of self-care as it relates to the pandemic and this time of lockdown and abnormality, and the greater meaning of what self-care even is, and why she believes the universe has presented us with this experience at this time. She's being interviewed by a guy named Joe Longa, and they're talking about the fact that right now, with everything that's going on, there seems to be a lot of discord between people. We talked about that last week, especially about how we should be handling the pandemic. Everybody has their own opinion. There's this huge debate about mask wearing. people are upset that their daily routine has been interrupted. It's just put all of us a little bit on edge, even more than usual. And as I said, we're a very litigious society. We were already at a pretty high level of can I speak to the manager culture before the COVID hit. We were already so now we've got so many more reasons to be at each other's throats. And so this guy is asking Dr. Kim what effect she thinks this is going to have on people, especially now that a whole lot of the ways we used to connect with each other that might have diffused the tension have now been taken away. For example, the simple act of just giving someone a hug. And this is her answer. She says, I think it's going to bring us into deeper connection with ourselves, because you can't really have a true connection with anyone else until you first genuinely connect with yourself. How many times have we talked about this? So if we want deeper love, deeper connection, and deeper intimacy, we've got to create that within and for ourselves first. If we can connect with our own light, even in the darkest of times, that creates the possibility for a deeper connection with others. Another thing I think this time is teaching us is that we are not our physical bodies. Our connection with others is not just a physical thing. I can connect with those I love in my heart, in the deepest space of love, right here, right now, without necessarily having to be in their physical presence. That's the muscle we need to work on and strengthen right now. Ultimately, loneliness only points you into a deeper space of meeting yourself and causes you to ask yourself where you have looked to your relationships with others to feel a sense of identity and connection because you've neglected to connect to yourself. That was really deep. She says what we're having to do is look at all these places where we get all this strength from our relationship with others, which now has kind of been limited because we've neglected to have a relationship with ourselves. Why not let this time be an invitation to connect more fully with yourself in the stillness? Instead of trying to keep up with your same level of production, I am what I do, and output, why not give yourself a break? This is a global invitation to slow down. Okay, so again, she's talking about this shift from the masculine approach to the feminine approach, from doing to being. And then she continues to address what we were talking about before, this constant need we seem to have to look through the lens of fighting. And as most of you know, she's a medical doctor trained in emergency medicine, so she understands and she has lived with that surge capacity we were talking about earlier. She talks here, though, about how even as a doctor, the way she has found that she helps people most is by something she calls being the medicine. Her whole message to people who have chronic illnesses, don't fight it. Stop trying to fight it. Just ask it what it's here to teach you. And she's very big on the concept that instead of fighting or eliminating disease, that you should put all your focus on allowing your body to be in health or allowing healing to come to you, which it seems like it's the same thing, but it's a very different place from where you're starting. And so that's a total shift from the masculine, action-oriented approach to the receptive, feminine approach. She broadens this concept out here, not only to physical illnesses or disease, but to any darkness you feel you're facing in your life. She says, we're not meant to escape anything, specifically what we consider darkness in our lives. We're meant to neutralize it. So I want to stop here and talk for a minute about that word neutralize. That word in our vernacular, if you sometimes you hear people talk on movies about we're neutralizing well, it's kind of come to mean kill, but the actual definition of the word neutralize is to render ineffective or harmless by applying an opposite force or effect. So actually, neutralizing is the opposite of fighting. I've never really understood that whole phrase, fight fire with fire, because to me, that pretty much just creates more fire. How you stop a fire is you throw water on it. The opposite, okay? So anyway, back to the article. She says, we've become so disconnected from our body as a spiritual vessel, we feel as if we are just a physical being separate from everyone else who is just a physical being. And all of the old systems that are falling apart right now are founded on that premise that our bodies are exclusively physical, and if we want to change something, we have to work really hard at it and make it happen, or fight to make something right. And that's not actually the truth, but it's what we're taught. Then she goes on to talk about the fact that even though she's come into a higher understanding of even the physical body and how it works, fighting the system is not a frequency that she wants to be in. So she's speaking here about the fact that as a medical doctor, even though she now disagrees with some of the traditional medical education she was taught, she doesn't feel the need to take a stance against it, against the medical community or the medical establishment, because that, she says, would put her in this frequency or vibration of fighting, which she feels automatically would put her on the defense or in a victim mentality of powerlessness. And that's what she feels her whole revelation, for lack of a better word, is all about. That you don't fight disease or sickness, rather you allow the healing, the wholeness, and the wellness. And that's one of the things that I love about her, is that she gets it. She's consistent. She realizes that this principle she's come across is not just true in one area. It's true across the board in every area. She realizes she can't preach or teach other people about making peace with what it is they feel is wrong with them, with their disease, but then go into fighting stance herself when she feels like some idea is coming against what she believes. She can't switch into this fighting mode and then be teaching at the same time other people not to fight what's in their lives. So she says, when you come across a truth that is higher or different than what you've been taught, it would be easy to get angry and feel like you have to advocate for that truth and fight against other truths, or to fight against the system you believe misled you. And that is not anywhere close to the frequency of allowing and embracing all that is as it is. That doesn't allow your light to shine through. Life itself is awakening so many people right now. I don't have to go knock on their door and try to awaken anybody. There is so much happening in the world now that is causing people to have to make this choice: love versus fear, truth versus dogma. I don't take that on. It's not my place. If you decide to take it on, you will immediately begin to feel the disempowerment of it. If you feel powerless against this big, bad thing that you have to fight, it's completely disempowering. It's so much better to just be the embodiment of the principle, to be the medicine, because then it speaks for itself. Yes, share your truth, but share it in ways and in environments that are fluid and joyful for you, not in ways that put you on the defense and in fighting mode. The most powerful way you will ever impact the world with any wisdom that you have is to simply embody it yourself. Wow. So what she's saying is just be the medicine. There's no outward action involved in that. You're not forcing the medicine on others. You're not even actively trying to convince them that they need the medicine. You just become the medicine. You become the solution. Embody the principles you believe in and live them out in your own life, and let them speak for themselves. Everybody else will come to their own solution and will change and grow and shift in their own space and at their own pace. So again, we're talking about long game, slow burn strategy, not this whole shoot first, ask questions later mentality that we've been in. We've got to shift our approach. We've got to look through a different lens. If we don't want to burn ourselves out by living for too long in surge capacity. All right. So finally, we're going to hear from our favorite Miss Amanda Ellis, who is talking about, number one, everybody now becoming a healer because the world is in need of a great deal of healing. And number two, in order to do that, we've got to, yet again, in keeping with our theme today, drop our ego and shift or change our approach. This is Amanda Ellis. She says, as a healer, the biggest thing you can do to block yourself is to overthink or to try and steer the outcomes in terms of what you wish for your patient or the person you're trying to help. You have to get out of the way entirely and just be a clear channel in order to let the healing energy come through your hands, your words, your voice, whatever. You have to remember that it's not about you. It's about what wants to come through you. And this seems to be a metaphor for where we all are at the moment. We all need to get out of our own way and allow the universe, God, Spirit, to work through us and to talk through us, to operate through us, and to be within us. There's this massive ego block that's present at the moment, and we all have an ego. We can't escape it. So we must learn how to step out of it in order to allow Spirit in. Okay, time out. I love the imagery of that. It's exactly what we've been talking about today. The mode we've been in for so long would be one of, okay, so the ego's the problem. Let's kill it. Let's destroy it. Let's fight it. Let's get rid of it. Let's eliminate it. That's our go-to solution. But what she's saying here is, no. That's not the way to deal with it at all. You can't escape it. You can never get rid of it entirely. And guess what? You're not supposed to, because in a lot of ways it serves a purpose. The ego has a job to do. However, we have let it get out of control. But the way to get it back under control is not to fight it, is not to beat it down or beat it back, but rather to simply learn how, like she said, step out of it when we need to and know how to completely put it on the shelf at those times when we don't need it and allow something bigger, more powerful to flow through us. It's like we've talked about before, our minds. Our minds are powerful and valuable tools, but they're not the correct tool for every single job. And they work best when we realize that that's all they are, a tool. Our mind is just a tool. We've let our minds take control the same way we've let our egos take control, or rather get out of control. And part of this shift that we're now experiencing is getting all of that back into balance. It's just like it says in the Bible, we don't always know what to pray for as we ought. And when that happens, what we are instructed to do is get ourselves, our ego, our mind out of the way and just become a channel for the Spirit to pray through us. That's actually the purest way and the best time to pray in the Spirit, when we've come to the end of what we can accomplish or figure out with our minds and our egos. That's when we surrender and let a higher power, a greater wisdom, take over and flow through us. And that's what I think she's talking about here. For decades now, many of us in the spiritual community, even in churches, have been learning how to do this individually in our own lives. But now we're having to learn how to do it all together as a collective. We're all having to step into that role of healer, not just a few of us, because it's going to take all of us to heal the world as it is now. The whole world has gotten to a place where it is in need of healing. So all of us, the whole world, must now become healers. We can't just rely on the spiritual leaders or the gurus anymore. That day is over. We've each got to step into that role for ourselves first. And when we become that for ourselves, it will ripple out, like we were talking about, to everyone around us, just like Dr. Kim said. So back to Amanda. She reads a short statement from a card deck that she's they're called oracle cards, and they just have little inspirational messages on them. So she's picked one of these cards, and she reads from it. She says, "Today, know that your vision, what you have imagined and formed in the invisible, will be delivered into the material world. Don't worry about the timing of things. That is in the hands of the universe. Your job is to continue to imagine." Okay, time out. We're not going to be able to manhandle this issue, to wrestle it to the ground, as you know, we're not going to be able to put this virus in a headlock and say, give up, and because that's not the solution. The solution will come. The solution's not going to come in our timing. That's not our job to figure out when it's supposed to come. The timing of all of this, when it will get resolved, and when this shift will be fully completed, is not in our hands. Okay, so she continues. Take a few steps forward and then stop and imagine some more. The universe's job is making it real. What a fabulous partnership. Okay, so do you remember a while back I did a teaching? I'm not exactly sure what it was about, but I remember that I gave an illustration of the difference between getting in a car and having to know every step of the process, every turn you're going to make in advance, and just allowing your internal GPS, which is your higher self, to tell you turn by turn where to go. Two different ways to live. That's what she's describing here. Humanity is not in a place at the moment where we can know 10 turns or steps in advance. Right now, we're in a place where we're just navigating turn by turn by turn, one step at a time, and we've got to make peace with that. Nobody knows how much longer things will be this way, the way they are, and what she's saying is it's not our job to even know that right now. It's our job to just keep imagining the eventual outcome we want, to step out of our ego, to step out of our mind, all the mental processing that we've become so accustomed to operating in, where we have a specific date and a deadline where something's going to happen. We've got to step away from our control and become an open, clear channel for God to flow through and accept His timing. I'm going to make an analogy here, like a woman having a baby. That's very feminine. Allowing yourself to be a vessel for life to flow through is a feminine quality, which is what we need right now. So that, as she says, is the fabulous partnership. When we just stop trying to do God's job for Him and concentrate, focus on doing what is our part. Amen? Amen.
You know you're getting a little older when you try to get up quickly and your legs say, what you doing, man? Why are you trying to move so quick? You've been sitting down for an hour. Wow, what a teaching. I think I was really connecting to the idea that there is a greater force that is available to us, and when we open that portal, it can flow to us and through us. It can be manifested through us. And so we give thanks for the awareness of this today. One of the things that I wanted to share with everyone today, and just take a few minutes to share this, is in the work that we're called to, and that this is what it is. We're architecting a movement together. There have been some difficult moments. I remember LaDonna and I started talking about interfaith ideas over 20 years ago, and about that time 9/11 happened, and we were like, great. Here we are. Let's have an interfaith church, and now we've got these crazy terrorists. Now America hates Muslims. How are we going to do this? And it was difficult for us because we knew in our hearts that all of Islam cannot be characterized by a small radical group. They're wonderful, rational, loving, inclusive Muslims that I come in contact with all the time. Similarly, watch this, as a Christian. How many times have LaDonna and I and people closest, we've lamented at lunch, why is so-and-so, this Christian preacher, have the microphone in his hand right now? Why is he making Jesus look this way? Why are we That's not who I am. I'm not that Christian. I'm a follower of the Christ mind. I don't want everybody to judge me by what I almost said a name, by what certain preachers do in their pulpits. That's not the Jesus that I know and study. That's not who Spirit and Truth is. But people from the outside have a tendency of kind of stereotyping the whole thing by just a few loud, idiotic voices at times. Okay. Similarly, I watched a story this week on CNN, and they were showing a police officer in, I believe it was St. Louis, who, on his own time and his own money, every week feeds over 1,000 homeless people. And it showed him in a van that he's bought just for this, pulling up to this place, asking each individual, what do you need this week? Do you need clothes? Do you need food? Do you need vitamins? Do you need more socks? Do you need water? You need deodorant? What can I give you this week? And he does it in his law enforcement uniform. That's his way of saying, I want to bring change from within. I don't want to be a revolutionary outside of something yelling at things. I'm going to stay in law enforcement as we chose 20 years ago to stay involved in the work of ministry. We could have left it, but we said, no, we don't want to be revolutionaries. Let's try to reform this and create a model from within. I don't care if it's law enforcement, military, preachers in the pulpit, Islam, whatever the things are that are out there, there's always going to be, I hope not, but seemingly there's always going to be some radical element that makes that just, as I said a couple Sundays ago, that just puts a big turd in the punch bowl for everybody. Everybody wants to drink the punch, but somebody did this. Now we can't drink it. You know, who put that in there? Whose is that? Who did this? Whose child did this right here? You know, somebody needs a whooping in here. That's what Spirit and True Sanctuary is saying. Look, we get it. We get that there are problems in the world. We know it. We do not have our heads buried in the sand. We're here as a light to shine, as LaDonna said, to let that greater force come to and through us. We know we're not going to change it overnight, but what we can do is provide a model. Let's provide a model of people who have different races, different cultures, hopefully different religions at some point, a little bit of sprinkling of that, different sexual orientations. Different countries can say, hey, we haven't solved all the world's problems, but we've created the kingdom of God. We've manifested it here with all peoples and creeds living and loving together. And so that's what we're trying to do. We are workers in consciousness. We are doing conscious work, trying to manifest this together. What an amazing teaching today. I have to admit, I sit on Tuesdays and kind of I get some of my inspiration for what I'm going to speak about on Sundays. I wanted to give some shouts out today to people that we love, that we miss so badly. Miss Emma, Callie, Pastor Don, Bobby, Sheila, Doreen, Rosaline, Ben and Vicky, Charles, Megan, Alita, Elaine, Josephine, Fred, and Mary, Annette, Lenora, Bobby, Laverne, Terry, and then Brandy wrote me a special note here. It said, Esther and I are watching on the big screen at our house today as she begins the first day of her senior year. Her first day of the senior year, she didn't want to miss the connection service. And then finally, Richard Copeland. We love you guys. We're so glad that we are staying connected. I had an experience this week. I saw someone that I haven't seen, a member of Spirit and Truth I haven't seen in quite a while. And, I had my mask on, and I just walked up, and I was going to do like the air hug. Like, man, I want to hug you so bad. And before I knew it, he had grabbed me, and we were hugging and crying. And I said, okay, the problem with Spirit and True Sanctuary is we're too loving. We want to hug each other. We want to shake. We want to grab each other. We want to tell you I love you. I miss you. And so that's why we can't have church right now, because y'all got so much love. Too much love is keeping us away from each other, because y'all ain't going to listen to me if I say don't be hugging on people. You're going to be all up slobbering on them, hugging them, breathing on them. And so maybe soon. I was talking to Sergeant Major before that they have these little wristbands that are different colors. One of the wristbands says, I'm okay with physical touch if you want to shake hands or whatever. The other one says, I need you to stay 6 feet away. The color means that. The other one says, I'm high risk. Don't come in my space. And so if we ever have church in person again, we're going to just get some wristbands to be like, don't come over here. Don't come over in my space. Or the other one say, yeah, you can come a little closer. Who knows? We're having to come up with creative ideas. Until then, we're staying connected virtually, and we're so glad that you're doing this. I want to give thanks for everybody that's learned to do it a new way. I had someone come to me Sunday and said, D.E., one good thing that's happened in this season is I've learned how to connect through streaming. I've learned how to give online. I've learned how to connect to family members through Zoom calls. And so if there be anything good, we think on these things. And so we love you guys. We hope you have a great week. We will see you again tomorrow night with Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. Our discussion was so good last week. We went like to 8:10, kind of like I did Sunday morning with my 3-hour sermon. But on Wednesday nights, when people are still, you can log off anytime you want, but people are just still, hey, this is good. And so that's when you're tapping into a nerve. And so join us. Invite a friend to join us. We got a message this morning. Brandy sent me a message. There's another person who wants to join our church virtually, become a member on Zoom. And so we have 2 new members that want to join who've never walked onto this campus, but just being exposed to the teaching and the worship and who we are wanting to join the church. And so we give God thanks for that. And we give God thanks for you. Have a great week. We'll see you guys tomorrow night.